Shalom. Shalom. Filling in for Brother Melech again. Be in the 7th chapter, book of Genesis. Then Yehovah said to Noah, "Go into the ark with all your household, for you alone have I found righteous before me in this generation." I find it interesting. He doesn't say, "Go into the ark with you and your household because I found your household righteous." I've heard it preached that way many times. Noah and his sons were the only righteous men on earth, and their wives were righteous, and that is why the 8 of them were chosen. I can't count the number of times I've heard that preached. But Scripture says that Noah was the only righteous man in his generation. And then people say, well, that means that his sons were the only righteous men in their generation. And I say, well, that doesn't make any sense because the Hebrew word out here doesn't mean I'm a generation and Yaakov is a generation. It means as in the Israelite people are a generation. We generate from the same place. We have the same genetic makeup. That is how we're connected. At this time in human history, there were no nations. At best, there were some big tribes. Everyone could trace themselves back to the first man and woman, literally in their family tree. No guesswork. So that can't be what you're talking about. They're talking about in all of humanity, Elohim is telling us, in all of humanity, he only found Noah righteous. Now, I try to be a righteous man. I don't always get it right. I can mess up every day. The flood were coming now. My Creator would not call me. Because I make too many poor choices in my life. So in the whole world, there was one righteous man. And because of his righteousness, because of his example, because of what he held people to in his family, 8 people were saved. Of every clean animal you shall take 7 pairs, males and their mates, and of every animal that is not clean 2, a male and its mate. Now here, some people say we have a contradiction between this chapter and the previous chapter where he says, I'm going to send to you 2 of every kind. Okay? Here's what people miss. Noah worked on the ark for a very long time. 120 years to be exact. In 120 years, from the time he was told, build the ark and I'm going to send these animals to you, how many offspring could those 2 clean animals of each kind have had? Could they have had enough that he could take 14, a male and 2 or 7 males and 7 females of each kind? Absolutely. Okay. Some species, he could have taken them within 2 or 3 years. But in 120 years, absolutely, he could have done that. It says, of the birds of the sky also 7 pairs, male and female, to keep seed alive upon the earth. For in 7 days' time I will make it rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and I will blot out from the earth all existence that I created. And Noah did just as Yehovah commanded him. Now think about that. Think about it long and hard. The man's never seen water come out of the sky. He's living in a tropical paradise. The closest he's ever seen to rain is mist coming up out of the rivers and the lakes and what have you, and covering the earth and watering it like dew. That's all he's ever seen. He's told, I will open the floodgates of heaven. I will pour out a flood upon the earth. All life will be destroyed. You and all these animals go sit in this ark for the next 7 days and wait for it. So for 7 days, this man and his family sit there while these animals are eating food and creating excrement and beginning to fill up their stalls a little bit. And the smell is all going to be contained inside the ark, and they sit in there for 7 days. What do you think that smelled like? You think there was a temptation to not do just as Yehovah told him and go out of the ark? Kind of like when things get really hard on us living in the covenant. Maybe we're really lonely because there just aren't very many believers out there. And we start to turn to non-believers and call them friends or potential mates. And we find ourselves outside the protective ark of the covenant. Because maybe inside the ark it smelled a little bit. At least according to the world, it doesn't even know it's dying. It says that Noah did just as Yehovah commanded him, meaning exactly as he was commanded. Noah was 600 years old when the flood came, waters upon the earth. I love that, how he keeps explaining, Moshe keeps explaining what a flood is, because it was unheard of in Noah's time. Noah with his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives went into the ark because of the waters of the flood. Of the clean animals, of the animals that are not clean, of the birds, and of everything that creeps on the ground, 2 of each, male and female, came to Noah into the ark. You know, they always show like Noah pushing the animals up the ramp. No, it says that he went into the ark and he trusted Elohim to bring the other and all the creatures into the ark behind him. As Elohim had commanded Noah, and on the 7th day the waters of the flood came upon the earth. You know, this past week we were helping some missionary friends of ours pack up. They came home from Taipan. They stayed a while here in Indiana. Now he's going to associate pastor of church in Pennsylvania. And they just couldn't seem to get everything loaded on the truck. And the day after I thought they were going to be gone, he messages me and asks, could I come help him load some stuff on the truck? So we went down there, and when we left to come home, they still weren't completely loaded. And I think the next morning, if I'm thinking right, I think it was the next morning, they finally get it out to Pennsylvania, like 2-3 days late. Okay, this family, ironically of 8 people, couldn't get a U-Haul truck and a van and a Durango loaded on time. So there's no way that Noah and his family of 8 people could have gotten enough of every species of animal loaded on the ark for it to make the journey it was about to make in 7 days. It had to be an Elohim thing. You know why? Because if we're doing it, if human beings are doing it, there's always confusion. If Elohim is doing it, he's not the author of confusion. Everything was orderly. There was no Noah and his sons pushing the elephant up the ramp. That elephant walked right up the ramp and into its stall and stood there and waited. I guarantee you. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day. Think about that. 600th year of his life, second month, 17th day of the month. Why is that important? I'll tell you why it's important. Because nothing is ever done on accident when it comes to Elohim. Okay, it's going to come out. It's going to be very important to us what day he went in. And for right now, I'm going to tell you it was probably about mid-May, maybe as late as early June if you're going by modern calendar. But that's the time of the season of the year that we're looking at. But it's going to be very important when we get farther into the story why the 17th day of the second month of his 600th year of life was important. It says, all the fountains of the great deep burst apart, and the floodgates of the sky broke open. So the waters above and the waters below that we read about in the earlier chapters, now they're the waters in between. And then we have what a lot of scholars think is a redactical note. The rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. Not sure why they think it's redactical, but they believe that. A lot of people believe that. It says, that same day, Noah and Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, went into the ark with Noah's wife and the 3 wives of his sons. They and all beasts of every kind, all cattle of every kind, all creatures of every kind that creep on the earth, and all birds of every kind, every bird, every winged thing. They came to Noah in the ark, to each of all flesh in which there was breath of life. Thus they that entered comprised male and female of all flesh, as Elohim had commanded him, and Yehovah shut him in. Two things I want you to think about here. One, comprised male and female of every kind. Why? Because that's what's needed to reproduce. You notice it doesn't say that there's 20-some or 30-some genders that he called up. It doesn't say we're going to load the ark in a politically correct manner. He says we're going to have male and we're going to have female, and we're going to keep every species alive. The second thing I want you to think about is it says that Yehovah shut him in. You know, some people, I hear people say that they feel like they're trapped in the covenant. I want to be one of his people, but I didn't know it would be this hard. I want to be one of his people, but I kind of like what's on the outside of that ark. It says that Yehovah shut him in. It doesn't say that he shut himself in and then had the option to go back out. It says that he was sealed in inside the ark. And that those who came along with him were also sealed in the ark. There's room for people that say that it wasn't until after Mashiach that people could be grafted into the covenant. 7 people just got saved here because one person was righteous. Actually, I guess 8 were saved, and then 7 were saved because someone else was righteous and they followed him. That's a lesson to every head of family. That's a lesson to every employer who is a believer. That is a lesson to everyone who just has some unsaved people in their lives that they care about. One person, righteous, 7 other people getting it right. The flood continued 40 days on the earth, and the waters increased and raised the ark so that it rose above the earth. The waters swelled and increased greatly. upon the earth, the ark drifted upon the waters. You know, I've seen this depicted in children's books and what have you. I've even seen it depicted in adult Sunday school rooms for like mainline churches. The ark is this great big bathtub toy with animals' heads sticking out of it because there's not enough room in there for them. And there's a sail on top, and Noah is trying to direct the course of the ark. None of that's right. This thing was the length of a football field, folks. And there was more than enough room for all those animals. You know why? Because he didn't just make room for all the animals, he made room for any person who would, even to the last day, make the decision to climb onto that ark. There was room. There was a lot of empty space because people didn't hear the message, come aboard. Come be sealed into the promise. And they were lost. And they were destroyed in the judgment. And there was no sail because there was no need for a sail because Elohim was at the wheel. When the waters had swelled much more upon the earth, all the highest mountains everywhere under the sky were covered. People say, well, how is that possible? Don't you see how high these mountains are? Well, there's two things you got to think about here. Number one, it's Elohim. He can do whatever he wants. Number two, the mountains then didn't look like the mountains now. You know how I know that? Because elsewhere in Scripture it says that when the flood ended, he raised the mountains and he lowered the valleys and the water ran off. People say, well, where is all that water now? There's not enough water on the earth to cover the entire earth. And I say, well, if you lower those mountains down and raise those valleys up, and if you consider the fact that at this point there were no ice caps, if you melted all those ice caps, they always say, if the ice caps melt, everything on the eastern seaboard will be gone. We'll lower those mountains that are would be blocking it from going any farther. It would just cover the whole continent. It's no mystery. Science backs it up. 15 cubits higher did the water swell as the mountains were covered. You know what that means? 15 cubits higher. That means that the tallest living creature at the time stood on top of the tallest mountain at the time, still would have drowned. When Elohim exacts a judgment, it is absolute. And all flesh that stirred on earth perished, birds, cattle, beasts, and all the things that swarmed upon the earth, and all mankind, all in whose nostrils was the merest breath of life. All that was on dry land died. All existence on earth was blotted out. Man, cattle, creeping things, and birds of the sky. They were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark. Pretty absolute statement, folks. Only those inside where they were told it was safe, who had been sealed in, who had not left when there was an opportunity, who had been faithful to the commandment, were saved. All the others who did not do those things, who did not hear the message, who did not cling to the message, who did not help to prepare the ark, who did not go in when Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives went in, because there was more than enough time for them all to go in behind them. Those people died. And when the waters had swelled on the earth 150 days, Elohim remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the cattle that were with him in the ark. And Elohim caused wind to blow across the earth, and the waters subsided. We were talking right before we started recording. This is a horrible place to make a chapter break, and where it's broken in most English Bibles is actually the middle of a Hebrew sentence. And so I went ahead and read through to the end of the Hebrew sentence so that we can see the context. You know, we talk about 140 days, or we talk about 40 days and 40 nights, how long that must have been sitting in that dark ark. They couldn't light anything. The ark was made of wood. Oh, and there was all those methane fumes from all the feces from all these animals. They didn't hold it for 40 days and 40 nights, but it wasn't just 140 days, or it wasn't just 40 days and 40 nights, it was 150 days and nights. It's almost half a year. It's roughly, I think I calculated not one time, it was like 5 months and a week or something like that. 5 months and a week. Let's just say 5 months. 5 months. Almost as long as my youngest daughter has been alive. Well, since she was born. She was alive in the womb, but since she was born and we brought her home from the hospital, almost that long. These people were in the ark, smelling that smell, and knowing that everyone they had ever known was dead. And they had to be questioning, who is this Elohim that we serve? Is he punishing us? Is this really salvation? And they had 150 days to think about it. Questions? Midrash. Yes.
Didn't the ark only have like one window, too?
From the biblical description, yes, we believe it only had, and it wasn't actually a window, it was an opening that got sealed. Besides the door that they all went in, there was one opening, and it wasn't actually like a window like we would think of a window. It was a sealed, covered opening. There was no light coming in. I heard a joke one time that said they must have had fireflies on the ark.
How did they see the beacon?
We don't know that. We don't know that. I'm sure there was provision made. I just don't know what it would have been. Yes.
Is it possible that how you said like there's a big boat and all their answers to that? Maybe God had Noah take the small, like the baby.
Yes, that's exactly what we believe as biblical creationists. We believe that he took young, healthy, close to, but probably not quite to the age of bearing offspring, so that they would have the prime of their reproductive period would be immediately after they came off the ark.
After a while, if you adjust to the dark.
Maybe a rough few days.
You know that the picture with the bathtub toy and it's sticking out as well, right?
It was like a big box the size of a football field.
They have a life size version of that in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard about? There's also a guy from my friends just told me about this. I don't know if he's from Norway or somewhere up in Europe. He loves the Jewish people so much that he built a life-size ark, or he's either building or he built it, and he's going to sell it to Israel.
That would be interesting.
The thing is, how do you control it? There was no reason to control it because there was no land to control it.
Anything else?
I have a question, and it's not mentioned here. Do you think there were? It talks about everything on traveling back.
Mm-hmm.
You think there was any species in the ocean that died? Do you think there, or how long?
No, I think anything that lived in the sea at that time just went on living. I don't. Yeah, there's no mention of any aquatic life dying.
Because I know some animals I just wonder if it was saltwater at that time. Because I know some animals can't survive in fresh water, some can't survive in salt.
That was so long ago. I don't think. I mean, there are freshwater dolphins. You know what I'm saying? There are subspecies of a lot of different saltwater animals that can survive in freshwater and vice versa. And I think this was just far enough back that speciesization hadn't happened yet. And I think that's something that has developed over time. And I think we never in scripture that I can think of up to this point have ever read of him going to a pond and pulling out a fish. You know, they were talking about the sea life. So I think that was predominantly what we were dealing with.
Okay.
I've also seen somewhere where, certain water qualities, even at present time, won't mix.
Hmm.
And so I've seen somewhere where a graph showing where if there was different.
Where the
different
heavier salt water would have sunk in
Yeah.
freshwater, and the freshwater fish would have, I've seen that too. I don't know if I 100% buy that as plausible, but it's something to think about.
Another thing to think about too is you're talking about, you know, male and female eliminated to the R. And that's true. Most of the asexual, you know, beings that exist today that I know of are in the water.
Right.
So that wouldn't have applied to them because they didn't go in there. The only exception I can think of is some frogs, but they go in the water anyway, so.
Anything else?